Hello and welcome to Fak'ugesi Online 2020, Power to the Pixel. My name is Natalie Banning and I'm the Fak'ugesi Online host. And today we have an online talk, part of our People of Play series. And our guest today is Julien HERBIN. I hope I said it right. And the title of the talk today is from the West to Africa. Julien is the co-founder and CEO of Kayfo, the first game studio based in Dakar, Senegal. He has 13 years experience in the video game industry in Europe, Asia, and North America, and has worked on games of all genres, from a small web game to major AAAs for PC and modern consoles. Julien will talk about his motivations to found a game studio from scratch in the West Africa, how Capo operates, and his vision for the future of his studio. And I'm just going to quickly read his bio. Julien is a veteran from the video game industry and has worked as a programmer for Ubisoft all around the world for more than a decade. He has worked on games all genres, production team sizes, and platforms. Julien is also co-founder and CEO of Kayfo Games, a studio founded in June 2019 and based in Dakar, Senegal. Kayfo is focusing on delivering innovative and non-violent African-themed games, primarily designed for mobile devices. Kayfo Games has released 3 games so far and are planning on releasing 2 new titles by the end of 2020. Welcome, Julien. I hope you are feeling welcome and excited. Before I hand over to you to present and share all this knowledge and exciting stories and reasons to why you started and the car, um, I would just like everybody to make use of the chat section to ask any of your questions throughout the chat, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end where I'll pose the questions asked in the chat to Julien. So hello, Julien, welcome.
Hello, Natalie. Thank you for this great introduction. And thank you, Tegan. Thank you, Vic, for the invitation to talk at this festival. This is very exciting. So yeah, as Natalie said, this presentation is going to be about my journey into the video game industry and how I came up to running a studio in West Africa. So I'm going to share my screen. Natalie, can you confirm that it's showing up?
Yes,
Please?
it is showing.
Great.
Great.
Let's do this. Okay. What's happening? Okay. So a little bit more about me. So my name is Julien HERBIN. I'm French, and I've joined the game industry, joining Ubisoft in 2007 as a lead web programmer. And then I became an online programmer. I've worked for 3 different studios in 3 different continents and on games of different kinds for different platforms, from the web MMO game to a high-end AAA games on the latest generation of consoles. And most importantly, I've worked in teams ranging from 3 people to about 1,000 people or more. But last year, I made a huge turn to my career by deciding to come to Senegal and found a studio called Kayfo, which means come play in Wolof, the local language. Today we are 8 people working for Kayfo, and we mainly make African themes games and non-violent. I should stress that as well. But I will dive into this into more details. So if we rewind to the early 90s, so as I said, I'm French. I grew up in a small town near Orléans, which is in the south of Paris, about 150 kilometers, which seems very far away at the time. And you'll see that I've traveled quite a lot since then. So it's funny to think back about this. Like most teenagers at the time, I was doing a lot of video games, playing a lot of video games. And you can see a bunch of games I used to love in the past. And I was having a lot of fun, of course, playing those games. But I was always wondering how to make games, um, and I was really curious about that. Later on, when I was about 12, I got my first computer, which was a pretty crappy Amstrad CPC 464 with a cassette drive. Uh, but still, I got my first computer from. It was actually given to my family by another family who didn't know how to use it. So of course, I used it to play games, but also I got into programming, reading the manual of the computer. And I was like, oh, okay, if I start programming games, maybe I'm gonna end up with something like this, like Super Mario World, which is kind of funny because in reality, when I was programming, I was ending up something more like this, which is already fine. I mean, you cannot make an incredible game, on the first attempt. So, well, it was clear for me that coding was my thing. I really enjoyed it, and from the moment I got this computer, it was clear for me that that's what I wanted to do. Ideally, I wanted to make games, but I decided to took a master's degree in computer science, and learned about many different programming languages, starting with Pascal, then C, C++, Python, and lots of mathematics and other more boring stuff on the side. And I somehow specialized in web development during the course of my studies because I had the opportunity to work on a few websites, what we used to call dynamic websites at the time, so written in ASP or PHP. And it was cool. I mean, I was programming, I was making some money, which would help me to pay for my studies and my other activities. And I was still developing small game prototypes on the side, but I always thought that I still thought that game development was really for the elite developers, for the elite artists, etc., which maybe was more true than today at the time. And I was still a player. I kept playing. I moved to playing online, to Counter-Strike, lots of FPS games that I don't like anymore. But and as I said, I was still prototyping small games on the side. And I was also still looking at job offers, just in case, even though I got a job offer as a web programmer early on in my career, I was looking at job offers and I was telling myself, oh, you know what, maybe someday something will come up, and you will get your chance to enter the game industry. And it did happen. One fine day, I landed on a job offer from Ubisoft Paris, who was looking for a lead programmer for an experimental web game based on the Heroes of Might and Magic license, IP, I should say. And I got hired. I had quite a lot of experience for a young programmer in web development, and I guess I was convincing at the interview. I was also passionate about games, and I had a few prototypes to show to the recruiters, and it worked. So I still remember the first day I entered the building and passed the gates. It was it was definitely one of the best days of my life. So I stayed about 3 years on that project that we built from scratch and we eventually shipped. And then I got the opportunity to go work on the very same project, but in Asia, in more specifically in Chengdu, China, to work on different version of this game, more adapted to Asian territories. So I did that for a few months, and then we shipped the project in Asia as well. And I had the opportunity to move to another project, which was a PC game, which could also be ported on console later, was also based on the Might and Magic IP, but unfortunately it got killed and it was not released, although it was announced, so I can talk about it. But I left the studio for mainly for family reasons before the project was killed. So yeah, this page of my story ended there. But I learned a lot from this experience, working with people with a totally different state of mind, a different mindset, a different way of working, and also ironically, it helped me improve my English, because at the time I was barely speaking English. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I got enough, experience to be comfortable speaking English in the context of work. And then I came back to Paris, and this time I got the opportunity to work on the Just Dance IP. I joined the Just Dance team, and the great thing about it is that, well, first off, it's a very um, how to put that, a very enjoyable game, because it's something that you can share with the family. It's different from all the war games that we can see around. There's no violence. It's about happiness. It's about feeling good, about dancing, and yeah, it was a great experience. And the other reason why it was great was that this game ships on every consoles on the market, and I got my first experience on consoles, be it the Wii, the Wii U, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One. So it was challenging, but I learned a lot about the console ecosystems. And then I put a pause in my career because my wife, who is working for NGO, got an offer to go to travel to Dakar and get a 1-year position there. And since she wanted to be closer, to the field, I thought that it would be cool to take a sabbatical and come along with her. And that's what I did. So I moved to Senegal. I volunteered for a small NGO as well. And on the side, I was working on some prototypes made with Unity. I had a bunch of ideas. And the cool thing about that is that at the time at Ubisoft, we were always working with internally developed engines. So it was nice to learn about a more widespread engine. And there was one event that kind of triggered everything else. It's a hackathon organized by Orange Senegal in May 2015, where I showed up. I was going to present myself as a mentor to young people who wanted to develop games. And it turned out that only one person pitched a game, which was it was a runner game, putting in scene the iconic Car Rapide, which is a local bus that you can see all over the place in Dakar. And yeah, that was pretty much the idea. So I told him, okay, since you're alone, I'm going to sit with you for the 3 days of the hackathons, and let's just do it. And it went really great. It was an awesome experience. And then at the end of the hackathon, I told him, okay, you know what? I have time. I have a few more weeks before I leave Senegal. So let's try to make a game from there and release it on mobile, on the App Store and on the Play Store, which we did in November 2015. And I can say it was one of my best creative experiences. But my plan was always to come back with Ubisoft. especially knowing that I got the opportunity to then move to Montreal to join the Montreal studio, which is the biggest one, the most famous one, having released the most incredible games from Ubisoft, like Assassin's Creed, for instance, Prince of Persia, Watch Dogs, etc. And I joined the Watch Dogs 2 team, which fitted me well because I love this IP. And well, it was great. I stayed 4 years in Canada, and I was living the dream, really. So I can say that I had a very special career with Ubisoft. I had awesome work conditions. I had the chance to work with great and talented people. I had access to beautiful offices, free gym, awesome internal events, lots of benefits. Of course, Ubisoft has a worldwide presence. So as I did before, I always had the opportunity to move to some other place around the world and work in a different studio. Most importantly, I had job stability, a recurring income, health insurance, and overall life was good in Canada. But this is a joke, of course, but not only. The one of the main reasons why I left Canada was the family. Again, my wife was still working for NGOs, but she had been working for her NGO for remotely for about 3 years, and we had 2 kids in Canada, so young kids. And it turns out that it doesn't play very well with 6 months of winter. We love winter, but when you have toddlers, you cannot spend too much time outside, and they cannot enjoy, winter activities so much. And we were like, oh, maybe it's time to go back to a more sunny place. And again, my wife had the opportunity this time to come back to Dakar for a longer contract. That's when I decided that I would create my studio there, because I was confident that there was an opportunity to do it. Also, I needed a creative challenge. All my career at Ubisoft, I occupied a very technical position, and even though it's always possible to evolve to a different position, even internally, it takes time. And when you're good at something, people tend to want you to stay at this position. And I also had a kind of feeling of accomplishment. My dream was to work on a AAA console game, and I did that. And maybe it was time, to take on a new challenge. And that challenge was for me also about creativity. And of course, the social impact that I could have opening a studio in West Africa, which is kind of deserted, was very important for me as well. I wanted to make games that have a meaning, that to leave something that makes sense. I was reaching 40, and I think I think that explains. And I don't want to sound pretentious, but maybe in the course of that, if I could change a few lives, and I think in a way it's happening, because the people who are working with me have the chance to work on video games, while being paid working on video games, while they wouldn't have the chance without Kayfo. And the picture you can see on the right side is the first global game jam that I organized early this year in Dakar. And these young people also told me, now I realize that I can make video game as part of a team. I can contribute to that. So I think this is really important for me as well. And of course, there are also business opportunities in Africa. I'm convinced about it. There are young, skilled developers and artists. Even though most are self-taught, I believe that we can start making quality games in Africa. There are tons of resources online to learn and improve. There is, of course, a huge market opportunity, 1.3 billion people, very young population, a super high smartphone penetration rate. And even though the game industry revenue is pretty low as compared to the rest of the world, it's growing insanely. Everything indicates that the coming years are going to be very exciting for the African continent. And beyond that, there was also the entrepreneurship adventure. It was the first time I would create my own company and run it and learn about how to run a company. And it felt really exciting. So yeah, May 2019, I'm back in Senegal, and I reach out to everyone to try and find, who's with me. I reach out to solo game developers, to artists, to schools, and to companies in tech who seem to have an interest in gaming. And I end up finding a partner in this adventure with UX Design, UX, UI UX agency based in Dakar, which is 5-year old, I think, and pretty well known in the place. And they wanted to invest in gaming because they have the same conviction than me that we can make that it's gonna grow big soon, and that we can start making things in Senegal. So I started working on a first game called Afro Juggle. It was June 2019, and the African Cup of Nations was about to start in July, and we decided to make a small football game where you needed to tap on a specific zone of the screen with the right timing to make this little ball juggle as long as possible. So I sat down with UX artist at the time, and I took care of the code, and we came up with Afro Juggle about a month and a half later, that we released during the final phases of AFCON. And it was great. It validated that we wanted to make this project together, and from there we decided to hire our first employees and to dive into new projects. So here are the games we have shipped so far. So we have Dakar Rapid that I have put in the catalog of Kayfo games, Afro Juggle, and the next game we decided to work on is Clean My Beach, because when I was saying that I wanted to make meaningful games, one thing that hit me when I went on Senegalese beaches was the pollution. And I really thought that speaking about this terrible issue in a video game was a good way to raise awareness. So as you can see on the grades we get on the store, we always privilege quality over quantity. For us, it's important to show that we can make quality games, even if they're small experiences. If these games are mostly scoring games that you repeat over and over, we have a kind of a solid base gameplay, and we can expand on it. So a little more light on Clean My Beach. Basically, it's a slingshot style gameplay, kind of like popular titles on mobile, like Angry Birds or Dunk Shot, for instance. So it's like you're throwing a ball in a basket, except that you're throwing garbage in bins. Rather than hurting animals, animals will come back as you progress in the game, and you will reintroduce species and restore the natural ecosystem as you pass levels. So the game is free to download, on the App Store and on the Play Store. And we did put ads in it, but not non-intrusive ads, only rewarded ads that can help you get more from the game, or or progress faster. But that's it. We didn't want to pollute the game with uh, stupid free-to-play mechanics, because it would alter the message of the game. And next to that, we have actions in the real world, in the sense that every month we plant a tree in Dakar in the name of the best player in the game. So every month we have this running contest where players can send their score, and we will select the best player, and he or she can choose the name of the tree, and will get a certificate with the GPS coordinates of the tree. And this is really important for me, that it's not only just a game, and it can go much further. Of course, if we got support from NGOs, for instance, we could do much more. But it's our own initiative, and yeah, we're kind of running out of budget to develop the concept a little further. And besides that, we are also making educational games. For instance, for the French embassy in Dakar, we're making a game about entrepreneurship, or we made a prototype about nutrition this year. Well, the good thing about educational games is that it pays the bills. We get money to make them, and and also we keep learning. We we work together on the team. We get familiar with different tools, maybe different technologies, and it forces us to hit milestones as well. So it's a good thing to work on serious games on the side for us. So this is my team. As you can see, we have a bunch of various profiles, the kind of the usual ones in the game industry, the most critical ones, I would say. And for the beginning of the life of Kayfo, the team was definitely my main focus. I wanted to hire the right people and help them uh, train themselves, challenge them, and help them grow as game developers. So I often do one-to-one coaching to work on specific topics. As regards the methodologies we use, well, I try to reproduce pretty much everything I've learned in this industry so far. So at Ubisoft, initially I wanted everyone to be physically present, um, because for me it makes it easier to to sit together and work together, and especially when it comes to graphical things, to point on the screen, oh, this, you could do this, and then we can give real-time feedback. It's easier. But COVID came up, and in early April this year, we had to work remotely. And I can say that eventually it turned out pretty well, because most of the team was used to work together, um, and um, and they turned out to be engaged and uh, adopting the tools to work remotely very well. So I kind of changed my view on this. I will not require physical presence every day from now on, but maybe meet the team once a week, and maybe individual people to work on some specific things. We use agile methods, a Scrum, an adapted version of Scrum. We make our own tools to produce our games. We create our own pipeline. And we try a concept that I've learned at Ubisoft is always playable. We try to keep our game as clean as possible, and make it possible to play them anytime, even though we have a big feature being implemented. And documents organizations as well is very important for me, and we try to stay organized. As for the tools, we use pretty much the most common tools in the industry, so nothing very exotic here. So a little bit more context about us. We are a West African studio and one of the only ones, unfortunately. As I said earlier, the sub-region is pretty empty in terms of video game industry, and we are kind of isolated. But this is okay nowadays, since pretty much everything is going digital and was already digital even before COVID. But of course, we have challenges linked to that. One of them is that the public instances are not organized to help the industry. They don't. There is no kind of public fund or tax credit that we can claim. No real help in the region. And also, one of our challenge is monetization. There was an interesting talk from Teddy Kosoko earlier this week about how to monetize in Africa and how it's hard to monetize games in Africa right now. And I can back that up. We are having troubles generating revenues from free-to-play games in Africa. We are exploring, and I'm convinced that we will find the right solution by teaming up with telcos, etc. But it's not an easy thing to do. And to achieve that, we will have to find the relevant partners, be it telcos or fintech actors, to help us generating revenue on entertainment games. Now, our strengths on the flip side are that we ship games, we have shipped games, and we keep making games, even if they're pretty small. And the quality of these games is well recognized. We have ambition, and you will see that in the next slides. And I think our identity is very important. The fact that we are an African studio making African games, but not only. So what is coming up from Kayfo? We are gonna explore making mobile games, not only for the African population, to challenge ourselves to be in competition with the rest of the world, and try to monetize better with the bigger assistance. So we are going to get better monetization. And we're also working on a very special game that is set in Africa. It's an exploration/puzzle game that we are planning to produce next year and release it next year also. And that will ship on PC, mobile, and maybe consoles as well. We are already talking to some first parties. So this is our ambition. We want to keep making mobile games, because I think there is a place to make nice mobile games that will attract African players, and not only, and also be more ambitious and try to make a game with a story, with more content, with a longer gaming experience for higher end devices. And of course, we will keep making serious game if we have the opportunity to do that, because as I said earlier, it helps us keep learning, it secures revenue, and also most serious games are meaningful, and this is in our DNA to try and make meaningful games. Of course, we are also making pure entertainment game, but if we can put a message in the game or teach something or raise awareness about something, we will do it for sure. And for that, for us, gender and inclusion is absolutely vital. We need to take that into consideration, especially as an African studio. So takeaways from this talk, I think, are that if you look at my path to joining the game industry, is that yes, you can. If you want to make games, there is a way for you to make games. You need to put a lot of hard work, to trust yourself. There are tons of resources online, free tools that you can use like Unity, Blender, and yeah, just make prototypes, team up with people like you or that complete you, and you can make games. And making games will help you. Having prototypes to show will help you getting a job in a bigger studio if that's your plan. But you could also start your own company. Another takeaway is that making smaller games like indie games may eventually make you happier than you think, than working on AAAs. Of course, I don't regret anything. Working for the Ubisoft Montreal studio was incredible, and I'm really thrilled to have been working on Watch Dogs 2, for instance. But so it was my child dream, and I kind of achieved it. But for me, at this point of my career, it made more sense to start something else meaningful to me, than keep working on those games with weapons and violence and etc. And finally, I think that's the best thing. The best takeaway is that we, and not only we, but Kayfo plus other small studios that are building up in West Africa are putting West Africa on the map, like Letias, for instance, in Ghana. And I can see some more initiatives coming up. So finally, West Africa is getting on the map. On the map, we are getting some, some light on what we're doing. And I guess this is it for my presentation. So I will hand it over to Natalie for questions, maybe.
Hey, Julien. Thank you so much for presenting. I think it's just really beautiful how you've kind of shared your whole trajectory and story, and it seems like this is something that you're genuinely passionate about and like
For sure.
genuinely passionate about making it meaningful. Um, yeah, so right now in the chat, there's mostly people kind of cheering you on and just cheering on the chat. There haven't been any questions yet. So since it's a small group, um, we can open up the chat to being a verbal chat if there's any questions. I think we have time for about 2 questions. Or we have time. Let's hear what people have to say.
Hello. I just wanted to say, yeah, first of all, my name is Serena. I'm also from Senegal, so the same country as where Julien is operating, and I think it was one of the first times that I mean, that was actually really introduced to his the studio. I did play one of his games once, and I really like the philosophy behind what he does, based on this presentation. And if I were to have a question, I think I would say so did he like is he right now, because it says studio lead, so is he kind of like a game designer, and like also um how can I put this in a good question, because I'm studying game design, but I see that people like him start out as web programmers or other positions and eventually work their way up to game design. So I wanted to know if choosing this route to directly study game design is actually beneficial, or I should just specify myself into like other parts of the game industry.
Well, that's a good question. I don't consider myself. I think if I had to give me one role at Kayfo, it would be something like a creative director, because I'm kind of like trying to drive, to drive every project from a creative point of view. Because, well, the simple reason for that is that I don't have people with visions, with complete visions for games. So I'm trying to play this role for our different projects. But yeah, of course, I as a creative director, I work on game design, and I don't do art, but the art direction of our project is always something that I'm really involved in. I work closely with the artists, to define what is going to be the art of the games, and how we should try to make it better. Even if sometimes I have no clue, I try to challenge my artist and say, this here, I'm sure you can make it better. So maybe try something. So yeah, I'm more of a CEO, because I'm running the company, and also creative director. Sometimes I do some programming as well to help programmers when we have a heavy load. So I'm kind of wearing several hats. Now, as to come back to your question, if you want to make game design, and if you have the opportunity to take a course in game design, or have some kind of training in game design, yes, you should do it. I'm doing kind of game design. I'm not. I have no training in game design. I'm doing game design like people used to do in the 80s, in the 90s. Like, there was no formal methodologies to do game design. And I think it helps to have tools. And if you're really into game design, definitely I will encourage you to learn about it. I don't know if that was precisely your question, but and to complete that, from if you look at my path to joining the game industry, I haven't taken any specific video game lesson or course or anything. So it's possible to join the game industry without a specific training. But if you can, of course, it's better. It's going to give you more tools, and you will actually will have to work on games, for your student projects with other people who love games. So definitely this is something you should do if you have the opportunity. But if you can't, what I'm trying to say is that if you can't do that, there are tons of resources online to learn about how to make games from different standpoints, be it game design, programming, art. And from that, you can already learn a lot.
All right. I'll say.
Thank you so much, Julien.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you for the question.
We have one more question from Tegan, so I think she'll also unmute and ask her question.
I will. Thanks, Natalie. Hi, Julien. Thank you so much for your talk. It's very inspirational, and it's lovely to see like such a dramatic shift in someone's thinking about how they want to live their lives and the work that they want to do, and it's like super and lovely. And Dakar is one of my favorite cities in the world, so I understand. I mean, it's a tough city, but it's also like a really beautiful space with extraordinary people. And I wanted to just one thing I just wanted to ask was, Is it if you connect with any schools that are teaching like game design in Dakar? And the other question, you know, one of the things that we've been looking at quite a lot is knowing that the games industry in Africa is actually really missing people like you, people who are like producers and directors and people who are doing the business of the festival. And I wondered if you had a comment on that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Tegan. So I'm going to start with the school questions. There are a few schools that have modules about video games, making video games. They are starting, but I think they lack teachers with kind of expertise. And there is no school dedicated to video game as well. So there are programming schools that are trying to teach how to make simple games and the fundamental concepts of game programming, which is good. It's a good start. In terms of art and animation, there is also one school called EIM, which is also it's not teaching the video game careers, but it's an animation, 2D and 3D animation school, and it's close to video games. And I hired one person from this school, and I can see that the shift is possible from making animated movies, be it 2D or 3D, to the video games. There are concepts that are a bit different. We are real time, whereas the production of movies is pre-calculated, but still the jump is possible. And finally, in terms of game design, there is pretty much nothing, because it's game design can only lead to making games. And to my knowledge, we are still the first and only studio in Senegal. So I guess the reason is that what would you do if you learn game design in Senegal, except joining Kayfo? But we don't have enough budget, unfortunately, to hire everyone who want to make game. Yeah, so I can say there's a movement going on. It's starting, but it's slow, and it requires more investment, probably from the public instances, which is I don't know if there are plans really. I also know there's also something else, and this is backed by the public instances, so I kind of lied. There's an educational program in partnership with Unity to teach video game making, that was supposed to start this year, and I think it was a bit postponed because of COVID, but I think it's still happening online. I don't know what is the state of it, but this is also a good thing. And the hope is that we will get more game developers in the coming years thanks to that program. Now about the continent lacking people, more people like me who are willing to make this shift and jump into this opportunity to do something meaningful and fresh in Africa. And maybe I don't know how it's gonna come up, if it will be a good bet or not. But I think the reason why like producers and people experienced from other continents are not making this move is that it's hard to get from a very comfortable position to taking all the risks. and I must say, to mitigate that, I'm not crazy. I made that because I know my wife can support my family for a few years. I can take this bet with a very limited risk. The only risk I have is to lose, to waste my time. But in my opinion, even if if in a few years from now, Kayfo is still not profitable in terms of, I mean, I'm sure we can become profitable making serious games. What I'm not sure about is that whether we will be profitable making entertainment games. And as I said earlier, it's one of our biggest challenge. But if I fail to do that, it's still worth it. I am learning so much from it. I think people are learning from it. We are making games that will stay, that will be part of the, you know, the culture, the digital culture, eventually, whatever happens. So even if we bankrupt, which I hope we will not, but I mean, when you're running a company, there's always a possibility that this happens. I have very low risks personally, and I will not consider this as a failure. So, I mean, maybe the other people who would like this, you know, living this journey, don't have the same opportunity to have someone that can, you know, get a job in Africa and cover up for the family. So yeah. Maybe that explains why me, I'm willing to do that, and it doesn't happen more.
Sure, no, I completely understand that, and I think you're in a position, like you say, that is that. I think my question was a little bit more okay, orientated towards the question of producers and directors, not so much people from the continent who are interested in that work, not necessarily that they're in a position where they can. But thank you for your answer. It was still a good answer. And,
no, I'm willing to ask to answer your
no, don't worry. It's okay. I actually wanted to tell you something else, and it's actually a discussion that we have with so many of the game makers on the continent, is about the larger industry and how best to do that. And I know that you've been part of these conversations, and of course, you know, we invite you to join us next week in the Publishers Forum. So that's really exciting. But I actually just wanted to tell you something else before I go, and that's so I saw Marianne on the call just for a little bit. She like dipped in and dipped out, but Fak'ugesi actually has a partner festival in Dakar called Afropixel, and they are doing a focus in May, I think, next year in 2021, and specifically looking at open. So they're using the premise of power to the pixel that Fak'ugesi used, but they're going to say power to the commons. So they're really looking at like open source environments and open source common spaces. So I would really love to invite you once we start developing proposals to join us with that. That would be really amazing, particularly with work around Unity potentially. Yeah.
Sorry.
But that's my comment, and that's all, and I will email you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always in, you know, when it comes to, you know, trying to talk about the game industry in the region and trying to do something to put some more light on it and make it evolve. I'm always in.
So
I think Emmanuel is talking, but he's muted.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi. My name is Emmanuel Yao. I'm working at Ubisoft Singapore. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Julien, for your presentation. I'm here today because I'm really interested to see how big company name like Ubisoft, Capcom in Africa. So I have some kind of internal goals here to push it in advance. I was in Montreal before. I went to China, and now I'm working at Ubisoft Singapore for the last 15 years. Wow. So okay. Julien, I want to check if you, do you feel that our local government does not realize our video games are really important compared to other countries like Western country, Chinese country, and so on. Because I don't see any encouragement to bring this kind of big company in the continent. And also, what can we do internally to help to motivate our company to go to first maybe share education, because there is so many skill sets in video game that anyone can find his path on it. And also, when I look at the situation currently of the COVID, for example, everywhere people are infected. But when we check Africa, it seems that there are less people affected by the COVID. And currently, if I need to find some tester, we are looking China, we are looking India, but we never think about Africa. So what is missing us? So it's a several questions that I'm asking, but
honestly, well, you know, Ubisoft has tried to open a studio, has been running a studio even in Morocco for a few years, and they closed it a few years ago. I don't know the exact reason why, but I think it was a good move. They were producing mobile games at the time for Nintendo DS, I think. Honestly, I don't see why a big company like Ubisoft wouldn't come to Africa, is not considering Africa. I honestly have no clue. And I think, one reason might be that, the governments are not realizing the opportunities that the video game industry represents in terms of generating revenues and generating jobs, and having a very how to say, a very technical, advanced technological ecosystem, probably they're not realizing that. Probably it's not a priority for some reason. I honestly don't know why we don't get more support from the governments. Maybe in some countries this is happening, but not here. To be totally transparent, Ubisoft knows what I'm doing here. From the day I left the company, I wrote to people at Ubisoft to let them know that I was going to do that, and if they wanted in, the door was open, and it would help me, make things bigger faster. But I guess they are looking. There's definitely an opportunity in terms of the cost of life is so low as compared to many countries around the world, even China. A decade ago, Ubisoft invested a lot in Asia, and keeps doing it because and earlier in Eastern Europe, because the salaries are much lower. And for instance, as you said, running a QC studio in Africa would really be cheap. So I don't know why there aren't more QC studios building up in Africa. This would be, I guess, the easiest way, because it doesn't require highly qualified people. I myself I'm more into creativity and actually making games, so I wouldn't be interested in opening a QC department. But I think this is gonna happen anyway, because Africa is the next place where wages are cheap, and it's coming. I don't know when.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I think that might be should we have one more question? I don't know. Should I?
Yeah, just one quick question.
Okay.
Just one quick question. I mean, it's very more personal, I think, but I just wanted to I just wanted to ask if you guys, your company, Kayfo Games, if you guys are also like open to like internship opportunities and stuff like that. And
so right
go
now,
ahead.
Right now we're not hiring because I'm kind of reaching the point where I cannot I don't have enough budget to hire more, and I don't have much visibility into next year in terms of whether we're gonna obtain more serious games to make and stuff like that. So my budget is really tight. So I'm not hiring because we are paying our interns. But I always, people who contact me, I always answer. I always keep them, their coordinates. I think that there might be, an opening later on, and I will write back if there is an opportunity there. But right now we cannot scale, unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Julien, and I hope that hope that it grows, because
it will for sure.
And thank you for being the few people who take the leap. It seems like you're really, really on the path of passion and pushing meaningful games, and I think that's really, really necessary.
Side of the door.
I think we all appreciate you and wish you the best. And yes, thank you everybody who's joined us today. Thank you to our guest Julien, and I hope that everybody has a lovely weekend. See you next week. We have another week. You can find our program on www.fak'ugesi. Is it .com or .co.za? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Julien.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Kate, again.